The movie starts with a rat scurrying through an abandoned alleyway, only ending up in a cage, the perfect example of a classic bait and switch. Meanwhile, we're whisked away to a woman named Amelia, who's getting catcalled by men on the street while she's in a taxi. Seriously, nothing screams, "Welcome to the neighborhood," like unsolicited commentary from random dudes. The taxi driver, clearly the voice of reason in this madhouse, questions her about why she wants to be dropped off in this sketchy area. She explains she's meeting a potential roommate and it's affordable. Ah, yes, affordable, which is the ultimate justification for questionable life choices. The driver, probably already drafting his letter of recommendation to the witness protection program for her, warns her to be careful. Amelia hops out, and the driver takes off like he's just seen the last flight out of Chernobyl. Immediately, she's accosted by a shady-looking man hunting for his cat. In this neighborhood, lost pets and sketchy encounters are par for the course. Thankfully, one person intervenes to halt the awkward conversation and pulls the man away, prompting a dramatic sigh of relief. Amelia heads to a house and rings the doorbell. Across the street, an old man named Bruno is giving her a dirty look as if she just keyed his vintage car. Soon enough, the homeowner opens the door, revealing a younger lady named Melinda. Here's where the main event kicks off. Amelia introduces herself, and Melinda does the same. Both of them engage in the obligatory pleasantries. Melinda, with a straight face, explains that despite the neighborhood looking like the set of a post-apocalyptic movie, it's moving up. Sure, Jan. Amelia, with the optimism of someone who hasn't seen the inside of a horror movie, responds that she shouldn't expect too much from a place like this. Melinda then spills the beans about her job as a bartender at a bar that's always packed, probably because it's the only place where you can drown your sorrows about living in this dump. She then leads Amelia inside. They barely make it a few steps before an old lady named Karma intercepts them. Karma, clearly the self-appointed neighborhood watch, scolds Melinda for leaving her bin open, claiming she's inviting a rat infestation. Melinda assures her that she'll handle it, and they proceed inside. Nothing says, "Home sweet home," like a good old-fashioned public shaming on your first day. Next up, Melinda gives Amelia the grand tour of the house, explaining that since crime rates are sky-high, the neighborhood is super affordable. Prime real estate is like the constant threat of being mugged. Melinda talks about her gothic style and explains why the house looks like it is decorated by Wednesday Addams on a budget. Amelia, trying to match the mood, shares that she has to move cities because everyone knows her, and she feels like an outcast. Classic small-town escape story. She also mentions she's working a remote job because she's saving up for art school. Why not add starving artist to her list of aspirations? Melinda decides that Amelia would make the perfect roommate and takes her up to her room. But first, she shows off her room and spills the tea about her recent messy breakup. Sharing tales of romantic disasters bonds new roommates. Amelia's room turns out to be a small, closet-sized space, but she reveals she's happy with it. Minimalism or desperation, you decide. Amelia brings her things over to the house to officially move in. She pulls out her key and finds the house empty. But there's a note on the table from Melinda, saying she has to leave to attend something, probably another gothic emergency. Amelia hears a slight noise and calls for Melinda, but no one answers. Typical. She drags her stuff up to her room, starts organizing her books, and opens the curtain to get some air. Surprise! There are bricks already there. Cozy, right? She finds a container of pills, which triggers a flashback to her past where she has a panic attack and cries hysterically. A phone call snaps her back to reality. It's her mom, checking in on her well-being. Amelia answers rudely, but her mom reminds her of her fragile state and why she should keep in touch. Amelia gets frustrated and hangs up. She opens up the medicines, but notices that she can't take them without food. Practicality striking again. She goes downstairs and finds the door unlocked, despite remembering locking it. She calls out for Melinda, but no answer. The plot thickens. She goes outside to check if anyone is there, but finds no one. Just when you think she's alone, the same man from her first day on the street appears, asking about his cat again. The dude is relentless. She nervously tells him she'll find it, and he creepily grabs her hand before letting go and walks away. Next, we see Amelia walking around town, and she finds a cafe with books. A glimmer of normalcy. She happily goes in, heads to the arts section, and bumps into a handsome young gentleman. They stare at each other, and she realizes he's the guy who stopped the awkward conversation with the old man. They start talking about books, and Amelia shares why she likes being alone and how nice it is to escape. He wishes her good luck with her books and says he'll see her around. Sparks flying, maybe? The two roommates are back at the house. Amelia tells Melinda about her day at the cafe, and they chat about it. Melinda reminds her about rent, and then asks her to taste her cooking while complaining about the broken dishwasher. Can there be a day without any domestic drama? In the next scene, the two roommates have a heart-to-heart over a glass of wine, reminiscing about their tragic past relationships. Melinda asks Amelia how long she and her ex were together, and what led to the inevitable crash and burn. Cue the flashback. Amelia's ex is shown screaming at her in a car like a melodramatic soap opera villain. Annoyed, Amelia snaps back to reality and tells Melinda it isn't meant to be. That is the understatement of the century. Melinda consoles Amelia and launches into the sob story about her ex, Mark. Misery loves company, right? The wine runs dry, signaling it's time to hit the bar. Amelia rummages through her drawer, looking for something she dropped, but in a classic move, she can't find it. So, off to the bar she goes. Once there, Amelia feels like a fish out of water, or rather, an introvert at a rave. She decides to leave and informs Melinda, who waves her off with a casual, "See you at home." Cue the creepy alleyway scene. Amelia walks down the empty alleyway and notices a guy in a black hood approaching her. They both speed up classic cat and mouse chase. She manages to reach her house, locks the door, and peers through the window. Surprise, surprise, the hooded figure is standing ominously at a distance. She looks away for a second, and when she looks back, he's gone. Hooded figures are masters of the disappearing act. The kettle whistles, pulling Amelia back to the mundane task of making herself a cup of tea. A text from her mom checks if she took her meds, but Amelia lies and angrily ends the conversation, showcasing some classic teenage rebellion. She hears a noise, grabs a knife, and heads upstairs, only to be frightened by clothes on a mannequin. She looks downstairs and spots her neighbor, Karma, looking for Bruno. Suddenly, another sound emanates from the house. Amelia, ever the curious cat, walks towards the sound, finds a wardrobe, and opens it to reveal nothing. But then, plot twist, Melinda walks in with her ex, Mark, who wasn't as ex as she previously thought. Amelia, flustered, tells them about the noises, and Mark casually mentions the house might be haunted. Melinda brushes it off as mice and reassures Amelia. Good night, sleep tight, don't let the poltergeists bite. Amelia tries to sleep, but is kept awake by her roommate's loud activities with Mark. Then she hears a scream and rushes downstairs to find Mark convulsing in the chair from an overdose. Goodbye, passionate love scene. Hello, medical emergency. She calls 911, and they take Mark away. In the aftermath, Amelia brings tea to a distraught Melinda, who laments about Mark's inability to move on and his reliance on medication. Amelia, the ever-supportive friend, starts talking about her ex, Colin. She spills about how Colin was a manipulative, arrogant narcissist who started with sweet compliments and evolved into a toxic control freak, making her feel like her art journey was a waste of time. Melinda, overwhelmed by the sheer drama of it all, falls asleep on Amelia's lap. Well, what's the need for a therapist when you have a roommate with a lap? Amelia is back at the bar, where she bumps into the guy from earlier. Talk about fate or the scriptwriter's convenience. They exchange pleasantries, and he introduces himself as David. After some polite chit-chat, Amelia notices that they're reading the same book and drinking the same tea. It's like a match made in a hipster coffee shop. David gushes about how much he loves the book, and Amelia does the same. They soon discover they're both aspiring artists and start to chat about the Boiler Room Gallery. David suggests that if she wants to go, she should let him know. In a bold move, Amelia writes down her number on his book. Smooth. We're then whisked back to the house, where Amelia is working on her transcription job, but is distracted by Melinda's endless complaints about her boyfriend. Melinda starts talking about how her boyfriend once wanted to hit her, and she was scared. Amelia, in one-upmanship of traumatic experiences, shares how Colin once locked her in a car and wouldn't let her out, leading her to take anti-anxiety meds. Pure evil, am I right? Melinda then suggests that they go to the bar, but Amelia, ever the responsible one, says she can't come immediately, but will show up later. Amelia frantically searches for her pills to no avail. Panicking, she looks up withdrawal symptoms, which include paranoia, and decides to check out a psychotherapist named Dr. Leela. Amelia heads to the bathroom to ease tension, but hears shuffling from somewhere. She calls out for Melinda, but gets no answer. Suddenly, a shadow moves away from her door. Naturally, she decides to investigate. While searching, she's buzzed by a message from David asking to see her another time, and she agrees. She walks into a room and spots her pills in the bin. She questions if she's losing it, and, in a bizarre twist, a message from David saying yes appears. Creepy much? Amelia is seen walking down to the basement with laundry, her mother on the phone complaining about how she abandoned her ex. Her mom goes on about how she's in therapy because of it, and then blames Amelia. Frustrated, Amelia threatens to hang up, and her mom asks for the new number. In a fit of rage, Amelia throws something behind the washer and hangs up. She looks behind the washer to retrieve it, and is startled by Melinda's sudden appearance, and her complaints about one of the clubs being closed. They chat about the noises Amelia hears while Melinda does her skincare routine. Amelia asks why Mark made that haunted statement and mentions the disappearance of the previous tenant. Melinda dismisses Mark's comments and tells her how happy she is to be friends with Alwa. Friendship goals amidst the chaos. Amelia goes back to the basement to check on her laundry and decides to look for a missing sock. She pushes the washer aside and reaches into a pipe, only to pull out a deceased rat. She rushes upstairs to tell Melinda, only to find her face covered with a rash. Instead of freaking out about the rat, Melinda laments about her face. In haste, Amelia heads to the cafe to spill the tea to David about the madhouse she's living in. They chat about the creepy neighborhood and the odd man she met earlier. David, ever the knight in shining armor, mentions how scary the area is. Their conversation is cut short by a message from Melinda, so Amelia has to rush home. When she gets back, she finds Melinda in bed, looking even worse with a sore throat to add to her list of ailments. While in bed, she starts ranting about the missing rent money and naturally blames it on Mark. They hear the doorbell and brace themselves for the landlord's wrath, but surprise, it's David with some herbal medication for Melinda. Such a thoughtful guy, right? Amelia suggests they grab dinner at the bar to escape the madness for a bit. Once at the bar, they start chatting about their artistic talents. David asks Amelia how she discovered her gift of drawing, and she shares that she began by scribbling in books as a kid. David shares his own story, saying he started with small projects and moved on to more complicated pieces like sculptures. Amelia, intrigued, says she'd love to see his work, and he agrees. After paying the bill, he teases her about the rat incident and walks her home, suggesting she look up the house's history. Before he leaves, she pecks and asks him to call her. As she's about to enter her home, the creepy man reappears, holding a rat and startling her. She quickly rushes inside only to find Melinda standing up in a trance. Melinda, looking more like a character from a zombie apocalypse, cries about why Amelia left her. The rash has worsened, but she's happy Amelia is home and promises to see a doctor the next day. Amelia finally goes to bed, but is abruptly woken by Melinda on top of her, shushing her and saying he is in her room. Turns out, she's talking about a ghost. Melinda confesses the house is haunted, which is why she needs a roommate and begs to sleep in Amelia's room. Amelia, likely too tired to argue, agrees, and they get some rest. The next morning, Amelia tries to crack an egg for breakfast, but instead gets a greenish goo. Something is rotten in the state of their kitchen. After several failed attempts, she decides to search up the house's history, as David suggested. She finds out that there was an assassination due to dementia years ago, and that the house is infamous for being haunted. Freaked out, she shuts her laptop. She checks on Melinda, who looks exhausted and still refuses to see a doctor. Amelia has a session with her therapist and shares the haunting stories, but the therapist suggests Melinda might be manipulating her, just like her ex and her mom. Determined to prove her therapist wrong, Amelia returns home, trying to establish some dominance by chasing Melinda back to her room. She then decides to figure out how the rats are getting in. In her investigation, she discovers a hidden doorway leading underground. Who wouldn't explore a creepy underground passage in a haunted house? She uses her phone's flashlight to navigate in the dark and narrow alley, hearing mice in the distance. She squeezes into a tight corner and realizes she's under the neighbor's house, overhearing their complaints. Her phone rings, it's David, and she hurries out of the creepy underground, answering his call. She wants to tell him everything but instead heads over to his place. Sometimes, you just need a break from the paranormal to hang out with a cute guy. Amelia gets a melodramatic text from Melinda as she heads to David's. Melinda whines about Mark taking the rent money and apologizes for being a burden. Oh, typical Mark, always the hero of every disaster. Amelia reassures her and continues her journey, silently wishing she could have one day without drama. On the way, Amelia notices some police cars and a crowd. David startles her and explains a fire broke out in one of the houses. Amelia tells him about her neighbor's creepy conversation, but David, ever the calming force, reassures her it's harmless. Amelia continues her journey to David's, hoping for a peaceful day. But who are we kidding? On the way, she notices a suspicious man following her. She drags David into an alley and confronts the man, only to find out it's her ex, Colin. Surprise! Her mom thought it was a great idea to give him her address. Thanks, Mom. After a struggle, David helps her break free and Colin leaves, annoyed. David apologizes, but Amelia reassures him. After all, her life is just one big mess anyway. Back at her place, Amelia finds Melinda is out, so she and David have the house to themselves. Naturally, they start making out because a haunted house is the perfect setting for romance. Nothing gets the blood pumping like the potential for a ghostly audience. Things get intense, and soon they're in bed, chatting about life. David shares how he used to hide from his problems before, and he doesn't do it now. They start making out again because obviously, that's the best solution to everything. Amelia wakes up and finds David coming out of the bathroom after a shower. They start talking about the house. Suddenly, they hear sirens outside. They realize Melinda didn't come home last night. Uh-oh. A police officer arrives, informing them Melinda was found deceased across the street. She faints because clearly, things can't get any worse. They wake her up and question her about Melinda's last whereabouts. Amelia mentions Mark, who supposedly took Melinda to the doctor. David nudges her to mention Colin, and she gives his name and address. The officer asks for David's address too, revealing the fire alarm was a false alarm. In a bid to calm Amelia, David offers to stay over and fetch his things. Alone, Amelia starts searching the house and finds some familiar-looking medicines on her table stand. She wonders where they came from, but before she can dwell on it, her mom calls, asking why she isn't replying to her texts. Amelia spots her neighbors, the creepy old man and his wife, Karma. She calls the police, but just then, she hears a noise and discovers that it's Mark. He insists he didn't take Melinda to the hospital and something's off. Thankfully, the police arrive and arrest him, though why he got arrested is anyone's guess. Nothing is making sense at this point. Back in the basement, Amelia finds a hammer and a jar. She moves a cabinet, revealing a hidden door. Now, a normal person would stop, but Amelia isn't normal. She ventures into the hidden room, finding drawings and a bed. Just then, Karma knocks, offering her a cupcake and inviting her over for tea. Oh great, creepy neighbor time. This day just keeps getting better. At Karma's, they discuss the house's dark past. The previous family had an father, a withdrawn wife, and a reclusive child. The stress made the father snap, and the boy survived. Amelia asks where he is now, and Karma says he lives upstairs. As Amelia leaves, she encounters Colin, who mentions he can't see her because of her roommate, the one who never uses the door but sneaks around. Confused and creeped out, Amelia heads to the back of the house, finding an underground chamber with creepy peepholes facing the living room. She climbs up and discovers a stash of sodium, what Melinda used on her face. She finds another stairway leading to the attic, where she uncovers occult materials and Melinda's purse. Freaked out, she tries to call David but drops her phone. Colin arrives and tries to warn her, but David knocks him out with a hammer. Everything else is already going wrong, so why not add some more chaos? Amelia pours out her tale to David, her voice a mixture of disbelief and fear, punctuated with eye rolls and heavy sighs. She reaches for her phone to call the police, but of course, David beats her to it, dialing 911 like he is ordering a pizza on a lazy Sunday evening. His calm demeanor now feels more unsettling than ever, like he is narrating a bedtime story about assassinations and mayhem. As they wait for the police to arrive, David casually reminds Amelia of the car incident she conveniently forgot to mention. Amelia's mind races faster than a squirrel on an energy drink, connecting dots with the speed of a conspiracy theorist on a caffeine high. It all points to David, the sympathetic shoulder to cry on, turns out to be the mastermind behind all the chaos. Surprise, surprise. Desperate to escape the impending doom, Amelia dashes into the kitchen, her heart pounding like a drum at a rock concert. She grabs a knife, her hands trembling more than a chihuahua in a thunderstorm, preparing for a showdown that feels more like a B-movie plot twist. Meanwhile, David's voice echoes through the house, a sinister monologue of justifications and twisted reasoning that would make Shakespeare proud. He speaks of saving his mother, avenging perceived wrongs, and other excuses straight out of a villain's handbook. Amelia can practically hear the ominous music playing in the background. Suddenly, like a dark knight emerging from the shadows, or more like a deranged ex-boyfriend, David appears in the doorway, eyes blazing with fanatical zeal. He charges towards Amelia like a linebacker on game day, crashing into her room like a wrecking ball with a vendetta. In a last-ditch effort for survival, she swings a heavy book, shattering the mirror in a desperate bid to create some dramatic tension. The shards of glass seem almost symbolic shattered illusions, and broken dreams litter the floor. Amelia bolts through the house, dodging furniture like she is in a bizarre obstacle course designed by a sadistic interior decorator. She ducks into the pantry, her breaths coming in ragged gasps as she dials 911. her fingers dancing on the screen like they are playing a high-stakes game of Operation. But as she turns around, fear grips her like a clingy ex. David's deceased mother stares back at her from the freezer, a chilling reminder of the horrors lurking in every corner of this cursed house. His voice, now tinged with madness, proclaims his intent to haunt the place like a ghost with serious boundary issues, fueled by a potent mix of fear and fury. Amelia yanks open the freezer, seizes the knife like it is Excalibur, and charges through the house like a vengeful warrior princess. David, deluded and driven by dark forces, or just really bad life choices, tries to evade her wrath, but she pursues him like a relentless force of nature. They clash in a final struggle near the window, the air thick with tension and the smell of shattered illusions. With one decisive kick, Amelia sends David crashing through the glass, his screams blending with the night like a tragic opera in a trashy horror flick. As the first rays of dawn paint the sky, Amelia packs her belongings with the determination of someone fleeing a haunted house on a reality TV show. Her neighbor silently offers assistance, probably wondering if Amelia is filming the sequel to House of Horrors. She leaves behind the nightmare-inducing abode, a place where every corner whispers secrets darker than a Stephen King novel, carrying only the hard-earned lessons from her harrowing ordeal.